Well, first and foremost, thank you for tuning in today. My name's Steve Schlueter, and as Graham said, MAPS coach, bold coach, part of our Keller Williams University master faculty, and co-coach with Tammy Younks and Never Ending Referrals. And one of the things we do in our Never Ending Referrals community, really every quarter, we're looking at some of the key skill sets that are really critical for the market right now, as well as the market of the moment updates. What are the conversations that are necessary to have with our database? So as you tune in today, you had the benefit of just kind of getting an introduction to some of the things that we offer our folks in Never Ending Referrals. And today we're going to talk about pricing. In fact, do me a favor, let's engage in the chat. I want this to be a two-way engagement. And tell us what market you're in. Is your inventory trending up or down? So which way is your inventory trending, up or down? So put in your market, where you are, and where is your inventory going, up or down? Amarillo up, Orlando up, Des Moines. Hey, Des Moines trending up. I'm seeing a lot of up. Hilton Head trending up. Phoenix is up. Champaign. Hey, what's going on, Barb? Champaign. I love my Champaign folks out there. Houston, up, 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 and away. Dallas area, my personal inventory is up. Philadelphia, up. Casey, up, but sitting on the market longer, and so not changing. So we're seeing a real trend. Now, by the way, I'd love for a couple of you to come off mute and just share. So with inventory trending up, what are some of the challenges y'all are running into pricing today, especially with maybe the expectations of your sellers or consumers? Talk to me a little bit about your experience. Who'd be willing to share?
My name is Jamie Sheet from Clarkston, Michigan.
Jamie.
Hi, how are you guys? Um, our inventory is still low.
Mhm.
We have lots of buyers, but for some reason, like I have several listings and some more coming up, but buyers have not been prevalent for myself. But I know a lot of agents are super busy. It's just a really odd time. So the market and pricing is so important. We all know this, and I have a couple of houses that have been sitting, and we believe we're priced right. Everybody says we're priced right. They're just not moving. So I'm excited to hear about what goes on in this class
Oh
today.
man, you set the table for me just right there, because that is one of the biggest challenges I hear over and over again. We think we're priced right and it's not moving. And you're going, man, how the heck do we navigate this? And now, by the way, here's the thing we all know. None of our sellers want to be not moving, right? They want to be moving. And so we're going to start with the premise today of remembering that our job is to get the home sold, and to understand that sellers can't say no to their own goals. And so how do we help them discover the price that's really going to get them to their destination? Because here's the thing: when we get in these kind of crazy markets today, and we have a very wackadoo real estate market, confused consumers, uncertain consumers, um, the amount of counseling we have to do to educate them to make good decisions, goes up. And we're going to go through a few things. Indianapolis, we are primarily investor based. Interesting. Trending down, prices going down, property sitting longer, not moving. So you're hearing a lot of these same things. So let me get started today. And now I'm going to first share with you one of the things that I'm going to walk you through today. Is we're going to just go through some basic fundamentals of a challenging pricing environment, and some of the things that we're going to do to create the CMA setting, or the conversation setting with the seller, to make sure that we set up what we're going to do here in a way that's effective. Um, Number two is we're going to walk you through a simple conversation that when you walk them through this, you're typically going to get a much better initial price that's in line with what their goals are. And so let's go to work on this. And of course, Canada, you guys are still rocking. Yes, for sure. Let me pull the slides up. we're going to get started here. And so let's go to work on this. And we're going to just dive in. And of course, just a reminder on all of our sessions, we just remind you to make sure you obey the do not call, the TCPA, when lead generating. And of course, make sure that we keep you out of trouble. But let's start off with this with kind of the agent IQ test. How do you know if your listing is overpriced? So I'm not even going to ask you to really answer that because how do we know it's overpriced? It's sitting on the market, and at some level, it's the price. It's always the price relative to the market, relative to condition, relative to the competition. And so, we want to understand that pricing right happens twice. Now, this comes right out of the Shift book, tactic number 7 on page 135. And pricing right happens twice. First, it happens with you. And so, your pricing philosophy is really critical in terms of how you look at the market and how you evaluate the competition and the right pricing. And then you have to translate that to an understanding with the seller. So there's two things, and it really starts with us. And so let's start with us. Now, the mega agent mindset is this. And now let me qualify this and I'm going to date myself a little bit. I entered the residential real estate industry in 1987 in Austin, Texas. And in 1987 in Austin, Texas, the market was in a steep decline. In fact, in about a 4.5 year period, we lost 40% in market value. Texas and the oil belt was all in a deep, deep, deep recession. Some would actually call it a depression in the Southwest. And this is where I learned, some of what we're going to go through today because um, sellers were constantly chasing the market instead of being right in the market. And so your mindset has got to be this. Your job is to get the home sold. It's not to market it. It's not, it's great to have a great marketing plan to position you to be competitive in terms of your value. And yet the bottom line is to get the home sold. You've got to be the absolute, have the mindset that you're the expert in terms of you're not going to let anybody talk you into the wrong pricing strategy for the wrong reasons. Now, if you choose to take an overpriced listing and they know it's overpriced and you've got an agreement on we're going to monitor the market and we're going to do price adjustments quickly if necessary, it's one thing. But you've got to take that position that you understand the market. And then you got to take the time to understand the market. And then there's the 14-day mindset. And this is a critical one. And I'd have you make a note here. The 14-day mindset is this. I'm going to price this so that it's under contract in no more than 14 days. And the 14-day mindset also works this way. It's positioning the listing to be one of the next two sold in its competing market. Now, I want you to hang on to those words competing market for a minute because we're going to come back to that in a little bit. But it's going to be one of the next one or two sold. It's going to be the next one or two sold in its competing marketplace. You also have the mindset that it's always the price. Whoops, excuse me. It's always the price. There's no such thing as inventory. We don't want to we're here to sell homes, not build inventory. And there are two best pricing opportunities. Essentially, it begins now, and if you have to make a price reduction, the first price reduction. So the initial meeting or the first price reduction. Let's start with some CMA pro tips. And this is where I would really have you. And by the way, we're going to send you these slides, and we're going to send you the recording of this once it's been posted at MAPS. And here's some pro tips on your CMA, especially in these markets. Pull competing listings and comparables from the competing market, not just the neighborhood. Now, let's talk about what that means. So many times when I hear, hey, we're the best price in the neighborhood, we are absolutely the best value. We stand out amongst all the other competitors in the neighborhood. That's one thing in terms of positioning when the market is hot and we've got a trend towards less inventory. When we're trending more inventory and homes are sitting on the market longer, you've got to look at the broader market. And so here's the question. So how do I make sure I'm doing this? Is by answering this question. And the question is, where else would a buyer looking at this home also be considering a home? What neighborhoods would we be potentially competing with for the same buyer? And make sure that you're pulling the comparables and particularly the actives that you're competing against from those neighborhoods as well. Now, here's the next tip. When you sit down and you go through the data with the seller and you've gone through the summary of your CMA and you've got kind of a rough range, when you work to dial in that range, particularly on the competing listings that you're competing with, and maybe the three that you're really using to dial in the current market value, is scroll through the photos of those competing listings with the client. I will tell you, I had one of my agents. I ran a contest, and I own a couple of market centers, and I ran a contest where my productivity coaching program, they competed in a list off to find out who had the best listing presentation. And the top three were given the opportunity to compete for my listing. And one of them came through, and what she did was she walked through the competing listings on her iPad and scrolled through all the photos of the competing listings. And that was so powerful because I was doing the natural thing we would all do. And as I'm making a mental comparison, and she would ask the question, so how's this? How do you feel like this property is similar, or better, or maybe, not as superior, to yours? I'm like, well, that had nicer hardwoods and that had better countertops. And all of a sudden I found myself getting a reality check as she went through the photos about where my property stood. It was a real comparison. Whoops, let me get back in the right spot. Once you've done that, taking those comparisons and building a high to low range of value based upon the competition and the comparables. And when you think about the high range, make it a value that you'd be willing to list it at, and yet it seems like it's the broadest reach. And then we'll use the trend conversation in a minute to help dial in where their house is going to fit in the range. So we're going to work from a range of value instead of a specific price with our sellers. But it's in our initial looking at the competition, looking at the solds, that we're going to get the range. In softer markets, we're going to put a much heavier emphasis on actives and pendings versus solds, because the pending is the most current thing in the market. And of course, the actives are what we're competing against. And so just a few CMA thoughts. But now let's kind of walk through the journey we've been on. Now, this is right out of Shift, tactic number 9. And when we go through and we think about various markets, you'll know the X and Y axis here is price versus comparisons, condition versus comparisons. And this is the journey we've been on in some of our markets. We go back during COVID and before the rates adjusted, and everything practically was in the market. You could do no wrong, and you got offers or multiple offers. And there were just a few fringe properties that maybe because of condition or way out in the stratosphere of pricing, were just out of the market. And then as things started to shift, you start to have, the in the market gets more defined and out of the market gets more defined. But within this, what you tend to find is there's this no man's land somewhere between in the market and out of the market as things soften. And I think this is what we're experiencing a lot when folks say, we're priced well. We think we're priced well, and we're getting some showings, but we're always a bridesmaid, not a bride. And it doesn't feel like we're out of the market because we're getting some activity, and yet we're not getting offers. And it's this little place in between out of the market and in the market that there's no man's land. And we just sit and we sit and we sit, and we just can't quite figure it out. And this is a nice little graphic to present now. And it's not that we're in horrible condition, it's not that we're horribly priced. And yet, in the market, there's enough inventory coming into the market that the consumer feels like they have more options and they're being more selective. So that being said, let's talk about how we can educate people. Um, so I think what a lot of you are experiencing this place called no man's land, and especially um, if the consumer is feeling like the trend's soft, they're being very selective in what they have to choose from, and they have more to choose from. How do we get the seller to choose a better price and do it for their reasons? Now, let me set this up for a minute. What I'm going to walk you through is something that worked for me in an extremely shifting market to get the right price practically every time. In a market where days on market were 130, it wasn't uncommon for me to sell things and have them under contract in 2 weeks using this strategy. And so let's take a look at this. And now, by the way you do this is after you've gone through the CMA and you have that range established, you're going to transition the conversation and say, pricing is a very sensitive aspect of our marketing plan right now. And can I share with you the dynamics that are going to really impact how maybe we choose to price your home tonight? And they're going to say yes. And you're going to pull out a legal pad. And what I'm going to show you, you're going to draw this out on a legal pad rather than put it on slides or anything of that nature, because if we put it up on a slide deck, it feels like we're selling. What we want to do is educate the consumer. And when you draw this out, it's an education process that you walk them through. So if you're my seller, I'm going to sit down. I'd like to walk you through kind of the dynamics that now that we have kind of a range of price and kind of we see what's going on in the market, I'd like to take a moment and kind of walk you through the factors that are really influencing maybe where we would put the price on your home. Would that be okay? And they're going to say yes. And what you're going to do, and I call it educating the sellers with a talking pad. And you may have heard it before as the Intelligent Seller's Guide to Pricing. You'll find it on YouTube as well, listed that way. And then I'm going to draw 3 lines on a legal pad just like this. And I say, now, first off, let's understand that there's really 3 kind of levels of price for every home. There's premium, there's market, and there's wholesale. And I'll draw those 3 lines. And then I'll draw vertical lines to the left and the right. And on the top of the left, I'll draw an arrow up to the top of the left. Now, so now, when we have a market that's improving, many people call that a seller's market or strong seller's market. Or when we have a market that's softening, that's what we call a trend line. Which way is the market moving? And so we call that the trend. And I'll write the trend on here. I'll write improving market, softening market. I'll write the word trend. And then, of course, I'll write the word risk. And what I'll say right here is, now, the first thing we need to do is define the trend in the market. And you guys have probably been watching the market a little bit. And would you say that we're in a tightening market where we're getting less and less homes for sale and lots of competition, meaning an improving market? Or are you sensing we're in a softening market where we've got more homes for sale sitting longer with less demand? And in most of our markets today, if they're paying attention, and they generally are, they're going to say, well, I'm hearing it softer. I'm going like, well, that would be correct. And it is a softening market. So that's going to be one of the factors that we consider. Now, risk, I'll come back and talk to you about risk in a few moments. And yeah, let's go to the other factors that are influencing where we price it today. And the next one is condition. Are we a model home condition? Let's call that a 10. Or are we a 1 where we've got neglect and deferred maintenance and really the house is in poor state of repair? Um, so condition would be another element that affects where on this continuum we price your house. How would you rate the condition of your home on a 1 to 10 scale? And let them author it. And they may say an 8, and I'd say, yeah, if that sounds pretty accurate, say, I think that's a fair assessment. And it's definitely in great shape. It's better than some in the market, and so I think that's probably a fair assessment at least. And then, of course, then we'll talk about time. Now let's pause here for a second. So I've laid this out, and one of the most important things that we did early in the price in the listing conversation was we reviewed their motivation to sell their home. And let's say they're moving from Nashville to Atlanta, and they want to be in Atlanta by July 1st. So here we are, it's first day of April coming up tomorrow. They want to be there July 1st, at August 1st, the latest. And so if we're at 1 April, we got 1 May, 1 June, 1 July. Really, it's 90 days. And so, and we're in a softening market, and that might be average market time to close in many of our markets. And yet that means they've got to really be on point with their pricing. And I'm going to ask them, why is it important that they be there in 90 days? And what is it they want to accomplish? What's the market like where they're going? Have they explored that? And we're getting really clear on their motivation. Now, this risk line, for your benefit here, we'll come back and talk about this risk line is how high are you willing to go and risk meeting your timeline to get moved? And then on the timing side over here, it's how much time do you have? Now, if the person has 90 days and it's 60 days on market to contract, another 30 to close, we've got to be dialed in. And if timing is in alignment with the market, where does that impact also where we list? Now, the other thing is, in a softening market, timing is not our friend. Having lots of time if the market is going soft may only serve to have us chase a softening market and possibly softening prices. So the next point would be, then I'm going to insert that range based upon the CMA that we did. And if we feel like, a good market price and market time with homes that are very similar, that are being offered today, not just sold, that we're competing against, and we went through the photos, and I might say, can we agree that based on looking at everything in the market, that it seems like the market price is probably right in that 300 bullseye range. And now we did see one that had a lot of concessions and some other amenities that maybe said three teens, 320. That would be the extreme. Stars and moon align, everything lined up for us. And we used every second of time we had. Maybe 320 feels maybe a little stretch. And then if we had to sell it tomorrow, get you a wholesale price, a call cash buyer, now you have it on the market, maybe 260, 250. And so does that feel like, based on everything we looked at, kind of the range, and get agreement? And then I would come back and say, well, let's talk about the factors then. Now, we did say the trend is towards a softening market. We do know that condition is working in our favor. Time, we've got 90 days. And, with days on market and closing time, your timing is really good getting on the market. And yet it's critical that we get it right so that we don't lose time. And so the other factor that comes in here, if I price it too high, am I willing to go for more money and risk missing my timeline? And here's the interesting dynamic with this. Most people, when I would share with them this, when they had a real motivation to sell, they would typically pick a price, in many cases, right, in most cases, right at market. At some cases, slightly below market, especially if there's a severe softening trend, they want to get ahead of the market. Rarely did anybody go to the premium price. In an example like this, I might have a couple that would choose 309 or 310. And after some consulting, not many even did that. Um, so let me pause for a moment and see if you have any questions about where we're going with this. So let's see if we've got anything in the chat.
Someone did ask, what do you say when they say it's an 8, but it's really a 5?
Oh, denial, right? Deborah's going, yeah, I have had that person. Um, and this is I think this becomes the sensitive part. And you're going, okay, well, and by the way, I think we could get you to an 8. And of course, that's my job to help us make sure we stage it well and so that it's prepared. Um, and when let's go back and look at some of the competition. Are we willing to do the preparation so that we make sure that we show up that way every day? And because I got to tell you guys, looking at some of the comparables, I think as long as we do the work to prepare, I would support that. And yet this may be that be honest a little bit, because remember, you can't lose things you don't have. Um, and here's the interesting thing. If you go slow through the pictures, and especially if it's a couple, you generally don't have two people that sit there in denial. And let's say, let's go through and how this compares with, with your home. So give me some thoughts. How do you feel like this one compared when you look at the kitchen, when you look at, the amenities, the lot, how do you feel like it compares? And I would go to the soft spots in their property. Where do you know they don't compete? And ask them after watching looking at the photos. So how do you feel like, let's go back and look at some of these. And now we can get here in the preparation process. Are we willing to do the preparation to make sure that that's the way we show up in our photos? Because people shop these photos before they ever show up in your house. And so that's probably where I would take them in a situation like that. And I'll tell you though, rarely after you take them through the photos do they misrepresent their own position. What's going on, Major? I see a Major out there, a good buddy of mine, Cedar Park. How you doing, Major? And so all that said, let's go back to this. Good question. Thank you. Here we go. Now, in a buyer's market, in an extreme buyer's market, when we are seeing a dramatic shift, oftentimes I would have sellers position it just below market. A 300, if 300 was market price and we were seeing an extreme softening in the market, meaning inventory rates, going up substantially, days on market going up substantially, somebody at 300 market price might list it at 290, 295, 285. And the rationale for doing that is they don't want to risk missing where they're going. Time is not their friend. Whoops. And time is not their friend. So I might consult them that, as severe as our shift is in our market, even though we've got great condition, the trend line is so soft in our market that if we don't get in front of this, we could be chasing the market. And if they're still insistent, and some folks will be insistent, well, we've got plenty of time. Can we price it at 310? I mean, it's not that far off market. And by the way, you always say, of course we could do that. Anything in the range you offer them, you must be prepared to list it at. But let's say we're in a buyer's market, and some of us might be seeing buyer's markets in spotty areas. If we're seeing a buyer's market, then we may have to have a really more deliberate conversation, and we dictate the trend. What are the statistics and maybe articles locally that support our position of what the trend is? Are you willing to risk getting to Atlanta by June 1 going for 310? And they go, well, we really don't want to, but can we try it for a couple of weeks? I go, well, we can, of course we could. And then yet I'll come and I'll do this. I'll draw a dotted line right below wholesale. And I'll ask the question, do you know what this line represents? And they will go, well, no, what's that? And I'll go, well,
Yeah, I think so.
whoops, hello. I said, that's future wholesale. If the trend continues the way it's going, we're going to see wholesale drop. And then I'll draw a dotted line right here. And I said, which means that's future what? And they say, well, I guess future market. Yeah, that's right. And then that means up here at 310, where we choose to put it, all of a sudden now we're sitting at what? The new premium. And see, this is called chasing a market. And this is my only concern if we start above market price, is that we could get caught in this trap, as significant as the trend is right now in your market. And so with that in mind, are you still willing to risk this as a potential scenario, going for 310 instead of maybe even getting a little, either at market or maybe even a little below? And I will tell you, and by the way, one of the analogies I would draw for somebody, uh, I'd say, do you remember that toy we had as kids, the Slinky? And that Hasbro Slinky? I think they still make the Slinky, don't they, Barb? Yeah, they still got it out there. And I say that toy, the Slinky, if you were chasing a Slinky down the stairs and you wanted to stop the Slinky, how would you stop the Slinky? Because if you're chasing it down the stairs and you reach down, going down the stairs, reaching forward, which way are you going to go? You're going to crash. Yeah, that's right, Major. You're going to crash. And so if you really want to stop the Slinky, you have to get in front of it. And really, that's the decision we have to make today about getting you to Atlanta, is that one of the things that you're facing right now is that's the kind of market we're in. And what happens is we can get caught up in a chase of chasing a market down the stairs, and ultimately it could end in a major thud with you taking dramatically less as you chase it. And I just want you to make sure that you understand that risk before we finalize our price. So happy to put it at 310, and yet we'd have to watch it very carefully. Based on all that, does 310 really feel like Atlanta in 90 days, given the trend? And more times than not, when we were in an extreme shifting market, and very few of us are in extreme shifting markets or likely to be at the moment, and yet there are those pockets that are. That's the conversation. And typically, even in those markets, if they would make a better decision and go something like 290, they'd be the best value in the marketplace, recognize the best value in the marketplace, and they'd be under contract quickly and on to their next, destination. And the other part is, what's the market where they're going? Part of helping them decide to price more assertively and in line with the trend is, if that trend is the same where they're going, remind them they're going to get to buy in the same market they're selling in. And although it might feel like they're taking a little of a blow here, they've got the gain opportunity on the other end. Let's see. What do you tell them when we've told them to, all of this and now they're considering for sale by owner? Oh, great one, Nancy. We'll come back to that one in a second. What do you say when they say another agent said I could list it higher? Um, by the way, Michelle, what I would do there is, did y'all walk through all the listings the same way that we did? And by the way, did the agent look just in your neighborhood or at the competing market? And I would plant those little seeds of doubt, and say, not all agents have studied the market the way that I have. And again, we could go higher. And that's why you give them that range. It gives you a little room to let it eke up and say, there are many agents who might give you the highest justifiable price and maybe to win your listing. But, my job in guiding you today is to make sure you get to Atlanta when you want to be there. And so I'd rather tell you as many hard facts about what's going to impact that before you make a decision. Would you prefer to list at the higher price and yet, we'll price watch. And if we're off, we can make the adjustment. And yet I don't want us to risk not hitting your timeline, unless you're okay with that. And here's, if you always put in front of them their goal and remember that they can't say no to their own goal. Rather than saying this is the price it's required to sell, does that feel like, based upon what we've looked at in the competition, does that feel like Atlanta in 90 days? Keep them focused on the prize of what they want to accomplish. And that becomes key. So the going for sale by owner. One of the things that we taught in Bold years ago was something called the problem presentation. And I would say, you certainly could go for sale by owner. And yet, has anybody talked to you about the three types of buyers? By the way, write this one down. If you don't know this one, write it down. Has anybody talked about the three types of buyers? It's actually four types of buyers. The first one is the first-time buyer. And of course, they generally are proceeding cautiously, want their hand held. The second is what we call the serious in a hurry buyer. And this is somebody that maybe just sold a home or they're on a lease deadline where they've got to be out, and they're on a hard deadline. And then, of course, there's the investor. And investors, of course, they really love for sale by owners. They kind of prey on them, looking to get a deal. And then the fourth type would be what we call the looky-loo. And now, as a seller, you're really only interested in two, right? The serious in a hurry and the, that first-time home buyer. And could we agree that the first-time home buyer is probably proceeding cautiously and wants guidance? And see, they tend not to be working with real estate agent. I mean, with a for sale by owners, they tend to be working with a real estate agent. And now, let me ask you a question. You guys are considering moving to Atlanta, right? And they say, yeah. Well, okay. And so, have you looked at homes in Atlanta yet? Well, we've done a little perusing. Okay, got it. Just curious, how many for sale by owner homes have you looked at? And it will be what? 0. And let me ask you a question. And you can certainly sell it yourself. You can put it out there, and yet let's say you finally get that buyer, and they want to be in 3 weeks, and you've got 1 weekend to find a house in Atlanta. Are you going to be getting a rent car, driving around looking at for sale by owners? Or are you going to get with a great agent and go see all the available inventory? And the odds are you're going to do that. See, here's my experience. We call that the serious in a hurry buyer. And as a for sale by owner, you tend to limit your exposure to those. In fact, for every one serious in a hurry buyer that maybe could see your home, probably only, out of every 10 that could see your home, probably only 1 does, because it's not in their awareness. And so, can you afford to miss out on 90% of the serious in a hurry buyers? And that's what we call the problem presentation. It's shedding light on the problem they have of going for sale by owner. There are other conversations along that we could offer as well. So, yeah, Wendy liked that one. So, okay, Wendy, glad you liked that one. So, that being said, let me just wrap this up a little bit. It's a very simple conversation, and it's one that when you see it demonstrated in a role play, is quite powerful. And just remember, the seller's mindset is my home is amazing and unique. And you never put down their home. You ask them questions, you help them self discover. That's where the photos come in. They believe their updates should return retail price. And we know that's not true. And they also believe that marketing sells homes. And the best marketing you can do, of course, is great professional photography that represents it well and a great description, on the internet. And of course, we've got to bring sellers to understand the less we negotiate, the more you make. You don't put yourself up against the time deadline. You got to help them understand the buyers are out there comparing so they know the market, not just your neighborhood, the competing market. And smart sellers sell quickly for better pricing because they made the right decisions up front. And of course, as a top agent, you're going to bring negotiating skills to the table to help them, negotiate the absolute best terms. And we come from the mindset that no offer in 2 weeks, we're overpriced, period. And then you think about standard versus aggressive price reduction. And I want you to write this down because I can't tell, we have some searches going for a property in Colorado, and I'll get the Zillow update or an app update that says a listing's been price reduced, and it'll be $6,000 on an $800,000 property. And I'm going, that's not a price reduction. That's a hallucination. And of course, I know my agents are doing it because they want the people that have that property saved or been searching that area to get an alert and put it back up on their screen. And yet, let me ask you, when you see an $800,000 property with a $6,000 reduction, as an agent or even as a consumer, what message is it sending to you?
That they are not willing to negotiate much.
Yeah, Barb, it says they're kind of stuck on their position, right? And it kind of says they're not serious. They're kind of smoking crack or something. So I would have you look at it this way. Price reductions, I said there's 2 times to get the price right. It's initially using this conversation, making sure that we've gone through those photos, that we've looked at the competing market, not just a micro neighborhood market. And then we get it right initially, or we get it right on the first reduction. And if we come at it from there's 2 different reductions. There's standard reduction or there's aggressive. And the standard reduction would be 4 to 6%. Anything less than 4% on a price reduction is a hallucination. So if it's $300,000 home, I'm looking for at least a $12,000 reduction. What do you think, Major? That sound right? All right, Major says okay. It's at least a $12,000 reduction. Now, an aggressive price reduction would be 8 to 10%. So that would be $30,000 on a $300,000 home. And how do you know which one is appropriate? And it's really the nature of what the market's been telling you. If you're getting a lot of showings, if it feels like you're in no man's land and you're getting a lot of showings, but you're just not getting you're not getting there, it's probably a standard 4 to 6% price reduction. If it's radio silence and it's no showings, yet there's activity and there are things that are selling and the market's saying no to your offering, you might be off 8 to 10%. And that's thumbnail. You got to really go back and if if it feels like, and if you're thinking you're competitive, this is where you have to shift your mindset. I would say, are you looking at a broad enough market that you're comparing to? So many mistakes right now are comparing micro just to the immediate neighborhood. You can't do that right now. And look at your builder competition, incentives, everything else that's coming into play, so that you can get them to Atlanta when they want to be to Atlanta. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Uh, any questions? Put them in the chat. I do want to tell you a little bit about our Never Ending Referrals program. I'll be going live, Tammy and I, in actually 14 minutes. We have every quarter in Never Ending Referrals, we do a market of the moment update. We've got that session with our folks today. By the way, all our sessions are recorded. April 7th, we begin with session 1 of Never Ending Referrals again, as we go through the 8 lessons of Never Ending Referrals. And what we went through today, are just some of the things that we also equip our Never Ending Referrals community with. It's one point to have a database, but it's also the skill set, the mindset, the tactics that are going to make us effective when we get to those kitchen tables. And these are the kind of things that we cover with our Never Ending Referrals community. So if you're not a part of that, this is kind of an outline of the 8 lessons of Never Ending Referrals. You can scan here to register, or Megan, why don't you drop in the chat the registration link. Love to have you part of our Never Ending Referrals community. It's $39 a month to be part of that, and we're live noon Central on Mondays, and that's 3 Mondays a week, usually the first 3, unless there's a holiday or situation like that. And let me see, I think that's got it. So let me go back and field any questions we have, and let's see what we've got here. Yeah, Aaron, good question. So you're suggesting going across town to a different market for pricing comparables. It's this, Aaron, I would say, where do I know absolutely anybody looking at this house would also be looking at a house in this section of the market? So maybe it's this school district or these schools or this geographic, kind of area. What if I were out with a buyer today and they said, I want to be in this general area and this is one of the neighborhoods I'd be showing, what other neighborhood would I be showing them? So think in that context. I wouldn't be going across town. And yet there might be somebody that they're willing to look at this part of town and that part of town, and they haven't narrowed their focus. But generally, before they buy, they've generally got narrowed to some area. And go a little bit broader than just the neighborhood. Maybe it's 2 or 3 competing neighborhoods that are similar age, similar price range, similar or same schools would be the way I dial that in. Good question, Aaron. Thank you. Hey, Linda, good to see you. Got Linda Sykes in the house. Katie Staples. Hey, Katie, didn't know you were there. Suggest you attend Never Ending Referrals. Thank you. I know you're running that in your market centers. All right. Guys, I trust this has been helpful for you. We'll send this recording out afterwards along with the slides so that you can just go through. And remember, when you do this, the CMA setup, going through those pictures, all that is vital. Making sure you've absolutely dialed in their motivation and what they want to accomplish. So when they're giving you resistance, it's not just about competition and price. It's about them making a good decision to get where they want to go. And do this on a legal pad. Don't have it structured like a sales talk. This is an education opportunity to help people make really good choices. So, all right, guys, that's it. I got to go ready to go do our market of the moment. Take care. Have a great week. We'll see you. Don't be fooled tomorrow. Yeah, don't be fooled tomorrow. Okay, just saying.